Okay, once I've got my potatoes all cut up into small pieces, the next thing I do is I put them into a cast iron pot. Now look at the size of that bad boy, and you're going to need a lid on there. So turn your heat all the way up to high, and we're going to kind of saute these potatoes. Now, I use real good olive oil. I don't use any cheap olive oil, and the reason I do that is because the flavor is so much better. If you spend an extra, you know, the difference between, my cameraman could come up here, the difference between really good olive oil and cheap olive oil is only a couple of bucks, and of course a little butter there to make sure everything goes right. So when you're buying olive oil, buy yourself some good olive oil, and don't skimp on the rest. You can skimp on the potato, but don't skimp on the olive oil. Okay. So our first step to home fries, I got my butter, my olive oil, I got my heat turned up to high, and everybody goes in. Look here closely, I got everybody got a taste of oil. I wouldn't say they're really browned up, but everybody got a little olive oil, everybody got a little butter. Now I'm going to turn it down to medium, and I'm going to put the lid on this, so this basically is like a miniature Dutch oven. Okay, my next ingredient that I'm going to add is peppers. Now, some of you go to the market, you find the peppers are on sale, go to a flea market. What I do is I buy them in bulk, cut them up and freeze them. My cameraman would zoom in on these peppers and potatoes. You see how they're all kind of browned up? There's nothing better than the smell of peppers. And now I'm going to add another key ingredient here, onions. Throw these bad boys again, slice them up, throw them in. And this top here is a key ingredient because it keeps the moisture in. It basically steams the vegetables here. They're up top. And we're going to want all these three flavors to come together. Okay, I've let this cook for about 40 minutes. And if you notice, as I take the lid off here, I'm going to turn the heat down now. I'm going back down much closer to low. Now you can see here, everything is becoming a clear color. So we're getting close to where we need to be. But don't worry about using too much olive oil. Okay, so right now I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil. And I'm going to add some ketchup. Now you people probably think, what's this wacky guy doing putting ketchup in? I'm not going to put a lot in, but I'm going to put enough in to make a difference. And this adds a lot of flavor. It gives it that little tomato flavor that we all like. And I'm going to add some distilled water. Hopefully you all have one of these Brita things. Of course the top always falls off, so I put a rubber band on. Okay, now I'm going to leave the top off. I'm going to stir this up. Now I don't add salt, and I'll tell you why, because what's the first thing every customer does at a diner? They reach for the salt. So let them add it. I will cook without it. And right now I'm going to cook this down to where most of this liquid is gone. And again, I've turned the heat down, way down. But you see everything is kind of one consistent color. Now, As I've taken all those potatoes, and you thought that was just a big, tremendous supply of potatoes, but once you put it in the containers, you see it's really not that much. Anyway, I love crisp home fries, so what I do here is I take my cast iron skillet, I turn the heat up to high. Again, I don't hesitate to add a little more olive oil, or you can add a little more butter. So we're going to put a little olive oil in here just to make sure nothing sticks. And I'll tell you, the cast iron is the best thing in the world to cook on. And I have a piece of cast iron that my grandmother from England had. And it works great today. So, okay, I've got this thing on high. Isn't that a great smell? Olive oil, I love it. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I've got it turned up to high. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scoop of potatoes here. Hear them sizzle? Great. Now, go right back to low. Right, if my cameraman there will focus in, you see those little bubbles coming out from the potatoes? That's what we wanted to do. And this will, I'm just making a little, I normally would make quite a bit more than this, but this is just for the, maybe I'll feed my crew, my camera crew, but this is, this will dry these things out and crisp them up. And again, you've got to go right back, as I told you, to low. If you don't, you're going to burn them. If you burn them, they're ruined. So, there we go. And I'm going to let these stay. If you just do a little, my cameraman or camerawoman there can get close. See those little bubbles coming around there? We want a slow, very, very slow heat, so these things just barely sizzle. We don't want a real, we started off with a hot sizzle, but we want to go right back to just barely noticeable sizzle here. And we'll let these go for a few minutes, and then I'll show you how they turn out. Okay, if my camera person there will focus in on these potatoes, you'll see how they dried up. And what I'm going to do now, actually, if you want them really crisp, which I like mine crisp, you can just let them go another 10 minutes at that low, low, low heat. And you can hear them sizzling. But anyway, we'll just, my staff has been working hard here today, so I'm going to give them a treat. And I'm going to let them try these potatoes and see what they think. And the beautiful part of this, with the cast iron is, if you get your cast iron seasoned, as you can see, there's very, very, very little in the way of cleanup. What I normally do is just wash them out, and then I have some cheap oil I bought at like the dollar store somewhere. After I rub it dry, I put some oil in there, and I always keep these things wet with oil. So I'm going to let my staff see what they think of my product here. And again, you can always add salt. Alright, this is my staff, and I'm allowing them to, after all this hard camera work, to try and see what they think. Well, what do you think, staff?
Delicious. Wait, one more bite. I think I'm like hooked up on potatoes.
Well, just so you know that my cameraman is also my wife of almost 27 years. But, you know, being Irish and Polish and a number of other Eurocentric extractions, I've always had a love for potatoes. And you know what? If I was to give some of these potatoes to my good Greek friend Pete Levandakis, who owns the Park Place Diner, I'm sure he would rave over these things. So, Pete, Yasu.